started. So I've got a couple of housekeeping announcements just to welcome you all back to this afternoon's session. We have a little bit of lost property here at the help desk. So if you feel like you've lost things, I think glasses included, please go to the help desk and we'll give it back to you. But I also wanted to give a big shout out this afternoon to all of our conference sponsors, and I think we could give them a big round of applause, please, if you might. They make our conference possible, and very briefly, we're going to welcome Bax, who's going to tell us very briefly about UK Open Textbooks. So, welcome.
Hello everyone, hi, I'm Beck Pitt from the OER Hub at the Open University. I am absolutely thrilled to be here in Bristol and to be representing the UK Open Textbooks project. We've got a number of people involved with the project in the audience as well, so raise your hands if you were part of this. Project. So basically we're a one-year Hewlett project collaborating to raise awareness of open textbooks and explore the transferability of open textbook methods to the UK higher education context. We've been doing loads of workshops and promotional events over the past year across the UK. You may have been to some of these or be aware of some of the work that we've been doing, and we've been utilising OpenStax and open textbook network methods in order to kind of engage people with open textbooks. I'd really encourage you to go to the website, check out what we've been doing. We've got loads of blog posts, we've got some case studies that we've been doing. You can also sign up to find out more about our kind of next steps. If you've got ideas, funding opportunities, things that you'd like to talk to us about, please come and talk to us. We're also going to be publishing a report of what we've been doing, the outcomes from the project, as well as research papers. So keep your eyes peeled. We're on Twitter at UK Open Textbooks, and do please go to the website. And thanks ever so much.
Right, so thank you very much. And again, thank you to all of our sponsors to help make this event possible. I'd like to welcome back Vivian Rolfner, one of our co-chairs, to introduce this afternoon's keynote, and I think some more fun as well. So Vivian, do you want to come up?
David's going to draw them out of his special hat. And then he's going to put it on. There's usually no struggle. So maybe...
we need some people to draw some tickets. Who's going to draw tickets? Let's do our Keynote speaker. Let's start with Lorna. You wear shoes. Okay. The first lucky prize winner, number 22, if you have ticket 22, at the back. Get yourself down here and get yourself a prize. So next, let's get our forthcoming keynote, Momodou, to pick a number. The next number is number 88. Does anyone have number 88 and would like to claim a prize? No? I'm afraid you're going to have to draw another ticket, Momodou. Sorry. That one didn't work. Okay. So hopefully somebody has number 100. Hey! Come down, Joe. So if we're doing keynotes, let's actually stop off for a second and get a ticket from Maren. So if you'd like to draw one. Okay, the next lucky winner of an amazing prize, we've not told you what the prize is, this is intentional, is number 21. Do we have a number 21? Yay! There seems to be some kind of a conspiracy developing up at the back there, and I'm not quite sure what's going on. They're all winning. So we've had 4 tickets. We give away 3 prizes. Let's get a ticket drawn by David Wiley. Number 16. So, how many prizes do we have left? Just 2 more. We need some more people to draw tickets for us. Who do we want to draw tickets? Oh, Alan, you can draw a ticket for us. You got
72.
ticket number 72. Does anyone have this?
No, but I have 50.
It's updated on that. If you draw a ticket, then you get not number 15.
Cheers, blockchain. 102.
Or 102. So it's clearly all going on back there.
It's rigged.
There is one final prize. I'm just trying to think who's going to draw this for us. And I think it needs to be Beck. Number 11.
Oh, that's me.
And with that, we conclude our grand prize draw. Or have we got any other prizes?
Well, there might be some more tomorrow, but
We'll do some more tomorrow. Yeah, why not? Okay.
the next prize is waiting to come on the stage. So
I shall let you get on with that, I think.
thank you, everyone. Wow, I've waited for this moment for a little while, and I'm so excited to announce our second keynote of the day, who is Momodou Sallah. Momodou is a lecturer or a reader at De Montfort University, and I've known Momodou for a number of years, and he just is totally an inspirational person, and we're going to hear about some of his amazing work. He was founder of the Global Hands organisation, which really embraces students in the academic journey and in sort of social causes. And Momodou takes students all over the world on trips to work with local communities, which is great. But the bit I've always loved is his total putting students at the heart of what he does and making a real difference to learners. Momodou is an absolute star in my eyes. He's a National Teacher Fellow, which is one of the highest sort of accolades you can get as a university lecturer in the UK. He's a Times Higher Innovative Teacher of the Year. I think that was 2016, 2015. And love to welcome Momodou onto the stage. Yay. Are you okay? Have you got water?
Yeah, I've got one. Okay. Thank you very much, Viv, the chair. We didn't agree on a price, but I'll pay you later. saying all those nice things. Yeah, it's quite humbling and quite actually embarrassing because I like to hide behind the scenes and do my thing. So standing here, I also want to thank the organizers, especially for inviting me to share. The co-chair, David, Marin, the other chairs, and all the wonderful, beautiful people here. I know it's about the end of the day, and I've already thanked Viv for giving me the graveyard session. So, can I just check, if you are still awake and with me, can you put your right hand up, please, right hand? Can you wave it from side to side, like you just don't care? Okay, good. Okay, now I've got you. Good. I think I'm gonna kind of like share some of my thinking. I sometimes want to consider myself as a heretic because some of my thinking does not go quite easily with configurations of ways of knowing and being. But I think that I am in good company here. I think I'm in the company in the temple of heretics. So I'm happy to share, and so that hopefully we would actually do a bit of disrupting together. But what I want to share today is I think it's important before I do anything, before I share my work, before I contextualize my work, to share a bit of my positionality and my situatedness, who I am and how that influences what I do. I think that's really, really important. I think it's important to do that for transparency. But if we're talking about reproducibility as one of the key tenets of research, it's important that in actually in sharing my stuff, I am transparent, and you can just take it from there. But also, I want to believe that a lot of the work I do is around pedagogies of disruption in order to generate pedagogies of hope. Because in terms of my situatedness, in terms of my positionality, um, I've been positioned in particular ways. And the people I work with sometimes are positioned in particular ways. Um, and as Paulo Freire would say, we become seduced by the defective logic of the system, and we accept the logic of the system, which in itself is defective. Um, so how do I disrupt that? But also, you would be called a heretic if you do those things as well. So I want to share some of my attempts at doing that. But also, unashamedly, I am a scholar activist. I love the research I do. I love the teaching that I do. I love the generation, the production of knowledge. But I'm also an activist in that I want to see the operationalization of that knowledge. I want to see how it impacts on people. Yes, let's talk about REF and TEF and NSS and all of the other S's. But at the end of the day, it's about how does it impact, how does it transform lives. And I'm all about that as well. That is very, very important part. That's a very important part of what I do. But also, um, it's about taking the classroom into the real world, but also bringing the real world into the classroom. So for me, education must be about that. And I want to talk about that symbiosis as well. Because if we talk about all of these things, open educational resources, open educational practice, open education, all of these things, I think it's really, really important we should weight it. But one of the things I want to say is like, I am myself an open educational resource. And I'm sure that everybody here is an open educational resource, not only in terms of the technological or the digital, but also as powerful resources that goes across borders and boundaries and that impacts on lives. And I think that's very, very, for me, that's a very key part of what we do in terms of education. I just want to say where I'm starting from. And I think in a lot of my talks, I want to start with this, that throughout the world, there are practical alternatives to the current status quo of which, however, we rarely take notice, simply because such alternatives are not visible or credible to our ways of thinking. And in my work with some of the UK universities, it's always about how do we decolonize the curriculum, because we have been imbued by a defective historical analysis, and the situation of people and communities can also be very faulty. And I think for me it's very, very important to say that there are other ways of thinking, other ways of being, other ways of knowing that are not visible or credible to our ways. And de Souza actually articulates that very, very well. A lot of my work in terms of being a heretic, in terms of being a disruptor, is actually going against the norms of these things that we have been told are in our normal, how knowledge is configured, how it is produced, how it's disseminated, how it is sanctified, These comes from particular pockets of ways of knowing and being. And for me, it's about being very clear from the beginning about that. And also, in a lot of my work, I've been coming across all of this situatedness, all of this positionality, and what I have come to call even a negative neutrality. Because in academia, we're expected to be objective and to do all of these things. But actually, when somebody starts, the whole point is that a perfect point of neutrality would be 0. But there is -1, -2, -3 in terms of the number line, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So sometimes people start from 5 or -5, but in their head, they're starting from perfect point of neutrality. And for me, that is kind of like quite interesting, because the institutions, the funding regime, the management regime, the educational climate is all imbued within a system that has its own bias. And I want to step out of that. But also in stepping out of that, I want to be clear in terms of Oakley's term of cultural affinity, or as developed by Bushnell as experiential affinity, epistemologies of the South by de Souza. We're talking about kind of like other ways of knowing and being, but who I am in terms of where I grew up. I was born in the Gambia. I lived in the Gambia until I was 24 years old. and I've been living in the UK for 20 years. That tells you how old I am now. But I have lived half of my life in either side, in the north and in the south, and I think it gives me particular views. But coming from a low resource setting, coming from a place where I have seen so much that has made up my experience, means that I come with particular views about particular things, which might not be the normality that goes on. So, and I am also a community development worker by background, a youth worker, and for me, it's always about how we disrupt the system. So there's the easy kind of like radical approach, the liberal approach, the functionalist models approach, from being very conservative about change. Because for me, what we do is not only about educating our students. For me, it has to do with social transformation. You know, how we change society, how we make society better. And yes, we should be objective as academics, as practitioners. But is that objectivity from a negative neutrality point of view, from a negative neutral starting point? I'm very clear where I'm coming from. And as far as I am concerned, I'm objective. What other people make of that, I think it's for them to deal with and not for me to worry about. And again, I mean, something that I've read as a young man, but something that keeps on coming to me all the time, because I do a lot of work in a number of African countries as well, and this is something I encounter. And Rodney argues, you know, Walter Rodney in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, argues that the main purpose of the colonial school system was to train Africans to help man the local administration at the lowest ranks and to staff the private capitalist farms owned by Europeans. It was not an education system that grew out of the African environment or one that was designed to promote the most rational use of material and social resources. It was not an educational system designed to give young people confidence and pride as members of African societies, but one which sought to instill a sense of deference towards all that was European and capitalist. And people tell me, move on, you know, that this is 50 years ago, 100 years ago. But I can tell you that when I was going to primary school, we had these things that we call symbols. So if you speak vernacular, or if you speak the local language, you know, does anybody know what symbols are? Does anybody know? You know, you could think of all the disgusting things that you can find in the bin. And, you know, like empty tins and decaying fish or whatever it is there. And they will roll it up into this rope and put it as a necklace around your neck so that whenever you speak it, the language, that's what you have to wear. And that was to discourage you from speaking any kind of language that was not English. So when we talk about, when Ngugi wa Thiong'o, for example, talks about decolonizing the mind and how the greatest destruction was not the raping and the looting of the land, but the destruction of the concept of self, in terms of how we see ourselves in relation to how other people see us. And I think that's very, very important. So yes, I mean, for those of you who are scholars of post-colonial, decolonial studies, you will begin to understand the impact that this has. Because as far as I was concerned, growing up in the Gambia, in my high school and in my primary school, as recently as in the 80s and early 90s, I didn't know much about my history because it wasn't taught. I could tell you about Alvisto Cadamosto and Vasco da Gama, and I could tell you about the Plantagenets and Sir Francis Drake and how Columbus discovered, and I could tell you about all of these things, but I couldn't tell you about the history. And part of what we're doing in terms of disruption is actually publishing books that are now being used in the University of the Gambia as core textbook to actually challenge some of these things. And these are acts in which we try to disrupt. But I'll come to that later. But I think it's also, I want you to see where I'm coming from. So it's almost like a soliloquy or like a monologue where I just talk. But I want to invite you to see what's going on in my mind and what I do, so that some of these things actually would make sense to you. So scholar activists. So on one hand, you could see, Viv has been kind to say, I've won that award, so I am in this formal setting. Yeah, but on the other hand, I'm actually sweating there. If you could see the picture, I'm not just posing. I mean, we just really actually do the things. And for me, these are the two extreme ends of what I do. In that one, I'm an academic and I do all of these things. I get into these forums and we played all the game about publishing and perishing or the ref and the TEF and all the things that you need to do. But deep inside my heart, that's where my heart is, about working with communities to empower them to see social transformation. And I think this is important because if you're talking about developing resources, if you're talking about promoting accessibility and all of these things, it's also very important that we situate who we are and what is it that we're trying to do. For me, I always keep on coming back to this situatedness, this positionality, and who I am, because that actually hugely influences my values and what is it that I do and what it is that I am about. So for me, the cornerstones of Open and Viv, Viv has, because we used to work in the same university, and she just used to go on about, Moodle and OER and whatever R, and I'm just thinking, what is this all about? I didn't get it, and it took me a long time, whether it's about open pedagogy or open educational resources or open scholar or whatever it is. I think for me, the fundamental principles that I want to apply are one of co-production. How do I work with the people, whether they're my students or whether the communities I work with, and kind of like almost equalize that power imbalance, so that we become mutual learners at the same time. So, and we co-produce knowledge. I think that's key in everything that I do. Again, it's all about disruption, because I work with a lot of communities who, have been have bought into, you might say, false construction of reality, or have come to accept this logic of the system, which in itself does more harm than good. So how do we disrupt? How do we cause trouble? Because if you talk about disrupting the supply lines of the production, the sanctification, the configuration of ways of knowing and being, it is important that we actually engage in that process. It's also about accessibility. How do we make education accessible? How do we make our resources accessible? And for me, it's beyond the digital divide. We can talk about, if I'm in my home in the UK, probably the size of my speed would be about 70 megs or whatever it is. And when I do it in the Gambia, it will be less than 5, and I cannot get more than 5. So that has got implications about watching videos, about accessing particular things. Or sometimes there'll be no electricity for 12 hours or 24 hours. So that limits access. So we need to think about other ways in which people access these things. So how do we make it accessible? But also, I assume each and every one of us here is an open educational resource, because you've got the knowledge, you've got the experience, you've got the ability to be able to engage at various levels with communities, with people, with students. So it's not only about the static net, or some people might not be able to access it in particular communities, but it's also about what we have within us that we can share at any given time. But also the technology, the knowledge transfer, or the knowledge sharing. And I think a lot of my work goes around knowledge sharing. And I will talk about that in a bit, and I'll show you some examples how we've worked with experts here and in other places to actually share knowledge. But we got to understand as well that when we talk about these practices, or whatever open we talk about, in whatever stage or phase we talk about it, it cannot be a one-way street. It has to link with mutuality. That if we go into other places, we're not only going so that we can learn and our students can learn, but also those people can be engaged in mutual learning, and that they benefit from the process as well. Again, it's also about counter-orthodoxy spaces. How do I create? Obviously, this always puts me in trouble, because I don't always follow what I'm told to do or how I'm told to do it. But part of what I am about is about these disruptive spaces and how do we generate them. And I will share some of them as well. So my full-time job is to teach at De Montfort University, and I've been teaching there for the past 13 years. So that's my job. My passion is Global Hands. I set up Global Hands with some students in 2012. And it was just like we were just tired about everything that was going on. And we didn't want to be bystanders anymore. And we wanted to do something about the way things were. And I can tell you some of the stories that actually led us to take action. I know in particular there was one incident where I visited 2 countries within a space of 1 month, and I saw squalor. I mean, I grew up in the Gambia, and I'm used to seeing low resource settings, but I saw squalor and poverty and hopelessness, so much so that, like I like to recount, I cried for 3 days and 3 nights because it was just so touching. And I just said, listen, I'm going to get off my backside and do something. And Global Hands was that baby, you know. And what we do is about education and public engagement. For example, we did a massive campaign around the back way. There was, you know about the back way when a lot of sub-Saharan young people are coming through Libya and Italy and drowning in the Mediterranean. And we did a big campaign around kind of like Candle of Hope, Candle of Light, through music, through documentaries, through fundraising events, but also with the media. But also like a couple of weeks ago, we had about 30 people from 8 European countries, and we were teaching them around combating hate crime, hate speech, and discrimination and all those kind of things. So that's part of what we do. In terms of international development, we've taken over 500 students to the Gambia. We do a lot of work around, for example, we built the 2nd biggest library in the Gambia, what that means with the students, without funding from any external body. But it was about architects who designed the building. It was marketing students, who actually did the fundraising and the project management and all of those kind of things. We also do publishing, and I'll talk about publishing in a bit, and that is more linked to being an open educational resource. So part of what we do is, like, in terms of study visits, we want to generate these spaces that are functional, that are participatory, that are relevant, that are disruptive. And I want to show you a video quickly, and then I will come and share more about this thing as well. Okay. Okay, that's fine. I think this is the next one. Here is in the Gambia, is in Jufure. You know about Kunta Kinte and Roots? So Kunta Kinte was supposed to come from the village just about a mile from there, or about 1 kilometer from there. And then we're standing in this statue, which is kind of like, which is called Never Again. And you could see the branded statue. And it talks about the experience of slavery and the impact it has on people, and we should never experience it again. But if you just go on my right, probably about 20 meters, you will come across the Chapel of Santo Domingo. That was one of the first churches that was built in West Africa by the Portuguese. You know, the era of exploration in the 15th century. That was the first place that they stood. And the chapel is still standing, so you can still see it. But also, if you go on the other side, probably about 30 meters away, you would see one of the first outposts of CFAO. After the abolition of slavery, then you had the legitimate trade, and a lot of these big companies came over and started to trade with the locals. So just standing there, on one side you'll have one of the oldest churches that has linked to history, to globalization, to the Spanish Portuguese explorers. On the other side, you've got the kind of like, because this is linked to the Industrial Revolution and kind of like the need for raw materials and the production and how that was acquired. But also when you cross over, you got James Island, which is named after King James, where there was a lot of slavery. And then maybe a mile there, you've got where Kunta Kinte is from. So when we take the students, this is just probably half a day of what they do in terms of understanding it, deconstructing it, and then learning with the head and with the heart as well. Okay. So, and when we take them, we want them to kind of like, we have particular objectives around, for example, life-changing experiences in terms of how they construct reality. Because in a number of Western countries, a lot of our students are very privileged about reality and don't necessarily always have counter views about what happened and how history has been explained. So that would be one of them. It was also about the impact of globalization, and we do a lot of things. For example, we go to the busiest market and we get them to look at the 5 phases of globalization, and they look at the they do an observational analysis of one of the phases of globalization, and then they'll be able to go back to the beach later on and sit down and draw their findings, and then kind of like learn from that process of deconstruction. So these are some of the things that we do with the students, or the objectives. And I just want you to watch this for a little bit. I have to promote my university anyway.
Welcome to the Gambia, the smiling coast of Africa.
Smiling coast. Yes, we're repping all day. There ain't no other place like the smiling coast, boy.
I describe this trip as transformative, motivational, and a lot of fun.
It's important for students to get an international experience, different languages, different food, different interactions.
It just helps really build the student experience and your experience as a person.
On our first real day here, we went down to Mandwa, and as soon as we got off the bus, people were there ready, like a band was there. We got up and danced with them, and I'm not a dancer, but I had a great time. It was just a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
The language I originally thought would be quite difficult, but after a while, after you've learnt a few phrases, it becomes easier. Like Nanga Death, which is how are you?
So what's this called?
Lemon is orange.
Lemon.
Orange.
So what is it? Tomorrow lemon.
Tomorrow means eating.
One highlight for me was going to see the family and stay with them and eat with them.
It's funny, no matter how different a life you've had and no matter how you've been brought up, you still laugh about the same things.
Just felt so at home. It was like a family reunion.
I have the confidence to go up to an employer and really sell this experience. They'll see that I've done grassroots development work.
Global Hands is such a great organisation. It would be nice to be part of something that's growing and developing. How much the hub has grown and changed from last year is just amazing. Having the chance to actually be involved to make sure that it's done in time was also great.
One of many highlights of this trip is delivering the literary workshops. I've had the privilege to deliver the first project at the hub while it's still being built. I've learned so much from the young Gambians. They're all positive and they all help each other build their own dreams.
I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to a school of high academic excellence.
The highlight of the trip has been going to the placement. It was really interesting to see how they delivered the lessons there.
I've learnt a whole new area around globalisation as well, and about slavery.
This house here is the house where they normally kept slaves also.
I co-hosted at the Mandwa hub opening.
Here representing the students that came on the trip just to talk about the fundraising we've done in preparation for this.
All the fundraising has been done by Damonford University students. The students believe in this idea.
I feel I've grown quite a bit. Like just this week I've been here. It has taught me like to improve on my communication skills.
It's just been really inspiring. It's inspiring in terms of my life and the things that I want to do in my life.
If I had to describe the trip in 3 words, I would say welcoming, life-changing, and thought-provoking. Like if you hyphenate it, yeah, thought-provoking. I wish I could just move here.
Okay, I think what I didn't tell you as well is that, yes, the students actually were engaged in the trip. They did a lot of learning before, during, and after. But also it's about how do they work with the other communities. The Mandawar Hub, which I'll show you pictures of later, was actually, the consultation for building it was done by our students. The design of the place was done by our students. The building of the project was done by our students. And it was just students from different courses who actually did this throughout. And we did not get any major funding to build any of this. And now when our students go to Gambia, they actually stay in there. And there are other projects that are happening as well. And it's now a massive resource, one of the biggest resources that we've got around that can actually cater not only for people who are coming outside, but also for people inside. But also it is working on the model to be sustainable, so that we don't have to be funding it, but it actually funds itself because now it can accommodate 40 people. It's got the second biggest library in the Gambia. It's got a massive hall for 300 people, and it should be able to generate money in order to be able to do itself. But in terms of transformation, and one of the students said, as I reflect now throughout the trip, Momodou was creating opportunities and asking questions for us to understand and engage deeper in the work by physically doing it. This put us out of our comfort zones, but I left the Gambia feeling like my learning experience had changed my life. I found the trip very useful. Although I wasn't always learning about globalization specifically, I was always learning about something, whether it be about the locals, the climate, the history, the Gambian culture, or even learning something about myself. It was a really good eye-opener, and nothing compares to having an experience firsthand rather than reading about it in a book. And I did some baseline questions before and after, and then like in the year we had I think we interviewed about 50 people over 3 years, and you could see in the blue section where people were at before, and in the pink one where they were after, in relation to their ability to embrace multiple perspectives and challenge thinking, and you could see the big shift before and after. And again, you could see here an openness to and respect for a range of perspectives from around the world. Again, you could see where they were in the blue before they went on the trip and after the trip. Again, in relation to this one, multicultural learning agility. And you see they were here, blue before and red after the trip, as a result of taking the trip. So, I mean, in relation to the Gambia trip, it's about students as co-producers, because from the planning of the trip right to the implementation, the video you saw was in 2015. In January 2018, we took 45 students from 3 different universities, and now we're opening it up to other universities so that people, I mean, if there are particular courses from students from particular courses, they'll just come on board, they will work on a project before, and they'll work with the local to actually deliver it after. So that's about the study visits we do. The other bit that we do in Global Hands, and also through my work as an academic, is the Journal of Critical Southern Studies. We talked about the invisibility and sometimes the perception that these Southern perspectives are not credible. So one of the things we did was we set up a Journal of Critical Southern Studies. And basically it was about the challenge, the hegemony, and knowledge production. I mean, I must say that over the last year and a half, we haven't produced an issue because I just haven't had the time. You know, we've dismantled the old board, we've set up a new board, and we're hoping that around August, September, we will launch again. But it was all about, part of the problem is like, you're an academic, you're an activist, and you've got so many deadlines that sometimes some things have to fall down. But we've got a number of issues already there on the website, and we had people from all over coming to actually publish with us, and some of the articles are very, very interesting. So if there is a GIST partner or open resource partner who wants to come on board and support this, hey, we'll come and work with you. But it's peer reviewed and it's also open access. And I mean, our access was really good. We were getting very high numbers in terms of people from different parts of the world accessing and also publishing with us. And we use this, as an open educational resource. But also we've got Global Hands Publishing. Like I said, we set it up because there are a lot of Southern voices that are missing from the discourse, from the mainstream. And we wanted to inject some of those Southern voices and Southern perspectives into the discourse. So we set up, and the interesting thing is, like, we don't have experts running on the publishing thing. We got students who are doing media. They do all the designs, and doing English, they edit all the books. And we got, literally, there is no other external expert. Everything is done by the students. But you can go on Amazon and you will see our books, because we've just gone for that print-on-demand model. And you could see that, I mean, we insisted that they were very high-quality books in terms of the content and also in terms of the production. And I'm very, very happy that some of the courses in the University of the Gambia are using our books as core textbook. And this is changing, it's having an impact, and that's what we wanted to do. But also, one of the last books that we published was about Banjul, the capital of the Gambia. And one of my most interesting chapters was there about the politics of shit. And actually, yeah, shit was used as a political tool. And then how it was used in the Gambia by the British officers who were there, and the resulting 2 outbreaks of cholera, which kills huge parts of the population. But the system has not changed drastically from colonialism to now. So just reading that, it was just like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. So it was educative for me, but I know that it actually provided counter narratives for a lot of people, and that's the whole intention of what we wanted. So we do a lot of these books. So this is the Mandua Development Hub, and it's a resource now that's being used. But also when students go from all over, they actually use it as well. Can I just check? Are you still with me? Yes. Okay. Okay, good. Yes, now you get it. You got it. But it's being used for different things, and it's a space, it's a resource, for people to do different things as well. But also, we're trying to get more into some of these other efforts, because you got to remember that sometimes what I encounter in a number of low-resource settings is also about the poverty of the imagination. And they've been told for so long they're like this that they begin to believe that they're like that. And part of us said, no, things are possible. We can do this. And I come up with all these crazy ideas all the time. Said, I'm sure we cannot do this. Said, yes, we can do it. Like we said, we were going to build the hub. Well, we don't have money. We don't have the plan. And within 1 year, we build it. So I think that's a testament to how strong we should be in our convictions. But we're setting up a food processing. So the Manduar Library is supposedly the second biggest library in the Gambia, and we've got like really good books. And we work with library staff from Demonford University, and it's probably got one of the few libraries that's got an online catalog. So we took up some of the books, and I've been talking to Viv about how we can make some of that online educational resource textbooks more accessible, because I mean, I go to the National Library sometimes and I see science books that are so old that they're dangerous science. It's like things that they are so out of date that people you're using it in the 50s and 60s and saying, oh my God, So and I think that's one of the things that we're trying very hard to use it to create this space where a lot of these modern books can be used there, and we can produce it and something about the deficit. But also, I mean, I think this is one of my favorite things. I don't know whether it's very clear. If you look at the library, I showed you the library before. The library, one of the other exciting things is like it's built using compressed art. When you take a bag of cement, you can normally make about 35 bricks. But it's very heavy on the environment because you use a lot of sand, which you mine from the beach, which is causing all kinds of erosion. But if you use the compressed art methodology, for one bag of cement, you can make 120, 130 bricks, and then you just dig 2 meters in the ground, get some mud, and then it just does the trick. So we've worked with young people from the village to introduce them to compressed art brick, and that's what's been used with the young people from the village to actually build this. And some of our students have been able to support them to do that. But the exciting thing is that the machine to make the compressed art brick, I think the Arum 3000 costs about £4,000. Yeah. I've been able to work with 2 young Gambian engineers with support from some of our engineers here to build that one for £250. That can actually do the same. We're testing it. I mean, obviously some of the resistance is like, this is not made from Europe, so it's not good enough. I said, no, let's change the mindset. Let's change the narrative. And they're testing it. I mean, I wish I could share some of the videos, but I've got some videos of them testing it. And I think it's going to take time. But it's about developing that space where we can start to produce the things that are responsive to the local needs. And for me, it's not only, it's getting people from here who've got the knowledge, who are willing to try out some of their theories, their practice, but also getting people to actually move in that direction. The other bit is like, I've got an expert branding and marketing, who's actually gone to the Gambia last week. He got there last Monday. And he's already started working with them, and they're setting up a food processing company. They're going to process dried. The Gambia has got 2 main seasons, and during the mango season, it's from around April, May, till around July, August max. And then probably 60% of the mangoes would actually get spoiled because there is no way of conserving or using them. So now we're setting up this company that does dried mango, cashew, peanut, honey, and I know I'm missing one of them. Well, yeah, one of them, yeah. And they've already started working on the brand. And before he comes back by the 11th of May, they would have started the production. But the young people are so excited because they're learning about the branding, about the production, and for using it for both local and international markets. And for me, that is about how we share resources, how we make knowledge accessible. And it's not necessarily about logging it in the internet, but having the open educational resources themselves sometimes move into that environment and then do some of those things as well. So watch this space. I'm hoping that within the next 3-4 weeks, we will be able to get this going. But also, I mean, you know, I told you I like disruption and I'm a heretic. So we just went to Nissan and said, yeah, we want to run the first solar-powered taxi service in Africa. Give us one of your vehicles, the electric vehicles. and they gave us one of their electric vehicles, and we spoke to Sharp, and they gave us some solar panels. And this car has been shipped to the Gambia last week, and it's going to be there by the first week of May. And we're going to try to test the proof of principle, because we did some research, and we found out that some of the taxi drivers were using 60% of their daily intakes to just buy fuel. But we've got so much sunshine that we don't know what to do with it there. So, I mean, today has been good. Today has been good in here, so I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. But what we're doing is, like, Rupert is my colleague on the other side, and Ayola, who was a student of DMU, but she's now one of the directors of Global Hands, standing there. And that other dude, I don't know him. But we're quite excited that we're establishing a living lab in the hub, where we're going to do all of these repositories, and we're going to look at how we address local problems through local solutions. But also, hopefully, this will be just the test of principle that it can be sustainable, that it can be economically viable, and that it can actually make a difference. And if we can move into building tuk-tuk style electric vehicles, that will be my dream, because the tuk-tuk style will take probably about 25% of the energy that it needs to run this kind of car. But we're going to run this totally from the solar energy. Hopefully, in the next 4 weeks, it will start running, and we'll start gathering the data, and we'll start demonstrating impact, and hopefully we can build other things as well. Also, the other thing that we've done is, like, we've also kind of like signed up with Sunshine Solar Academy, who are a charity based in the UK. They do some work in the Gambia. And by the end of the month, they'll be at the hub. We've given them some space, and they'll be at the Manduar hub. So we were thinking about how do we dry the mangoes, because to buy a solar solar mango dryer will be about 140, 150 pounds. And then when we were having these conversations, the lady said, yeah, we can build it for probably about 20 pounds. So we'll be building the solar dryer, not only to use for ourselves, but to be able to sell it for other people who could also be able to use it. But they will also be able to train young people, because one of the biggest problems is electricity. Like, there's not constant, regular electricity wherever you are. I think there was a press conference that was being had by the president of the country, and suddenly the light went off. It was very ironic. But, anytime the light could go off. So, and sometimes it could be for long periods of time that light is off. I mean, the new government is trying to ameliorate the situation, but it is still not anywhere near there. And one of the biggest issues for people who are off-grid, because the hub here that I showed you is off-grid. So we've got to build our own borehole, our own solar panels and everything. But one of the problems for those people who are off-grid is about charging their mobiles. So many of the young people, I think somebody said to me that about 1.4 million mobile users in the Gambia. It's just like, how is that possible? Out of a population of about probably 2 million. So people have got the mobiles, So one of the problems is often chargers, So, but this academy can teach these young people how to make the chargers from scratch, the solar chargers. And these are the kind of exciting things about transfer of knowledge, about making this education accessible so that it can improve lives, it can transform lives. And that's what excites me about all of this open thing that we're talking about. But the other thing that we do is like, I don't know whether are there any post-colonial, decolonial scholars in the house? Yeah? Ngugi Wachongo? Yeah, that's Ngugi Wachongo. So he was in the Gambia in 2017. We managed to get him to come there. And we do this annual Logic of the System conference. I'm trying to persuade some people to come and speak at the next conference in the Gambia, because we always do it. And Halifa Sallah is one of the leading politicians in the Gambia. And the other guy, Sallah, is also one of the leading writers from the Gambia. And we always bring this. This time we also had some other people in January. So part of what the students do is students will present papers at our conference that we do in the Gambia in January, and staff can present papers as well. And we create these spaces where, because for me, there are two main things. One is about how do we provoke consciousness, and two, support action as a result of that newfound critical consciousness. And part of the spaces that we generate is for people to rewrite the narrative, to question the logic of the system, to develop counter-narratives in terms of what we do as well. And then we've got, the idea was that we were going to stream all these conferences live, but the internet was so bad that we could not do that. So I've been talking to some people, said, come on, guys, can we not do something? Can we not do something? So, and I'm very, very keen to develop like an online facility where lectures can happen from all over the world, but people can come in there, have a very secure internet connection. And I've been talking to a few engineers, but I'm yet to find a solution. So if somebody's got a solution, we'll pay for you to come and have a great time in the Gambia in the sun. You just make sure you get the job done. Okay, so in terms of pedagogies of disruption, for me it's important, because whatever educational practices that we talk about or we're trying to generate, for me it's about learning with the head and with the heart as well. Because a lot of the learning is about learning with the heart, with the head. But how do we learn, not only in terms of those models and statics, didactic approaches, but how do we learn with the heart, with emotions, which sometimes we're told to remove from the education process? How do we generate those spaces where students can actually do that? But also, for me, there's a principle of mutuality. We're not only taking our students to go and be cultural tourists and to soak up everything. How do we improve the lives of those people that we have gone into? How do we transform the lives of those people? But also, how do we transform the lives of our situation, our students? I go there, and every time I actually learn, because you will probably not be able to tell me apart from the students. I immerse myself in the experience. And I only shout when somebody is doing something that's going to kill them and give me more paperwork to write. So, but apart from that, I'm always in the background and I do this. So I think it's very, very important in terms of understanding that mutuality, but also the emotional distance. Because when I'm when I'm teaching in some of this very formal environment, there's a very, very big gap between me and the students, and there's a very emotional distance. And when you go in some of those spaces and you start to get deep and to get students to open up, and then to be able to open up, that's a different thing. So you've got it, but also beware, be careful of your blood pressure, because when you try to do all of these different things, I've been told I've got 3 minutes, so I'm just going to shoot through this one. You're so kind, Chair. But I think there is about pedagogy, praxis, and public good, and I think there is almost a three-legged stool there that can be explored in terms of in open educational resources and any kind of other open education we're doing. So, access to technology hampers OEP, and I think I've already talked about that. But the key thing for me is about finance and viability. If you're going to make all of these resources available, all of these practices free, who's going to pay for it? And for me, that's why I have come to this conclusion that the charity model doesn't work. And I have, over the past 3-4 years, transformed myself into a social entrepreneur. I don't know what that means, but it basically is supposed to mean that, I need to have a more business heart as well, and I need to think about cost and kind of like, and making sure that people are not giving their time forever and not being remunerated and running away, but also making sure that the business actually generates enough money to keep itself going, although most of it will be invested into social good. But there is a model, because if we do all of this wonderful work and when the funding stops, it dies, is it worth it? Can we do a better way? But also the scholar activist continuum, and I do get into trouble a lot. So how do you manage that? How do you get your institution on board? How do you get, we've not had any major funding from apart from getting my National Teacher Fellowship of about 10,000 from the Higher Education Academy, most of which I spent in supporting the hub. We've not had any major funding whatsoever to do any of the work that we do. I must say, though, that De Montfort University has been very, very kind. Our Vice Chancellor has been very kind. And also the setup in terms of the mantra of DMU is defying convention. The environment has been created for us to be able to do a lot of this heretic, disruptive stuff. But again, co-production is the key. I think it's all about co-production. How do we work with the communities? How do we work with the students for them to take ownership of this process? Thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to be around if there's any question. And please feel free to get in touch if you've got any crazy ideas. Come on, I'm game. Bring it on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amazing stuff.
No,
I'll let you have a present.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have time maybe for 1 or 2 short questions. And then we really have to run for this boat, I'm afraid. I would love to keep this here going longer. I think that was incredible. I think we need some more applause, sorry. So if anybody out there has a quick question, we can do that now. If not, we can catch up with Momodou over the evening and over tomorrow. Please do seek him out and ask him. He'd be keen to answer, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Just one more announcement before we get on our boat trip, which will start forthwith. I'd like to just ask Anna to come up to the stage, because there's one more person who's won a prize today. And you can see, as Vivian and David already shared, coming to OER 18 definitely pays off. So before the boats depart for our tour, Anna is just going to give out one more prize. So
I promise it will be very quick. You all want to go. So I'm just going to do this with a little finesse. It's a box. It's a big box. So where's the number?
Your name.
I've got it.
And the name is on the next slide. Just go here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. First off, I want to thank that presentation. It was profound, and I think we're all resonating and digesting all that we learned. So thank you again. It opens the idea of this concept of openness And I'm very proud to work from a company that created a solution from the open source world. And we often participate in a lot of these projects, so it's very exciting. We're a video platform, end of plug. But now, who gets the prize? And it is Debbie Baff. Where's Debbie Baff? Is she?
Yeah, she's joined us.
She's gone. She's shot off. She'll be back tomorrow then.
Well, Debbie's made us this drawing and it's the splot of the day, so hopefully you can all help us make an even better one for tomorrow, where the competition will continue. So big round of applause for Debbie.
Yes. That actually looks, I'm so sorry about that. So you'll keep that for me? Yeah.
And thanks to Cultura for supporting our evening entertainment. So if you're keen to join us for a harbour tour of Bristol, please go out of the venue. The boats are just departing on the left in the sunshine. And we'll then be back here for drinks and nibbles and music from 6 o'clock. So the boats are departing at 5 o'clock. So please do make your way out.